Hello, this is Amon El Ramada one more time with you guys. I'm here with my good pal J.A. Ragnarson.
Ragnarson in the house.
Today we want to talk a little bit about, or a lot, kind of depending on where the energy goes, the Sumerian tablets, the Enlil, Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh. We can go on and on. You know where this is going. The Annunaki, those who came from the sky. Okay? This happens to be something I'm very, very I don't know if I'm obsessed, but I just love it today. I love reading about it. I love learning new things about it. I believe that the Watchers. When you read, for instance, I like to start this video by talking about the different books that intertwine in this story. You have the Book of Genesis, of course, as well as the Sumerian tablets in the cuneiform, but you also have the Enuma Elish, which is written in actual hieroglyph. Cuneiform and hieroglyph are two different things. You have the epic of Gilgamesh, was a Babylonian epic. It's not so much Sumerian, and the names change a little bit. That's more about the story of the Babylonian Noah and him trying to find immortality. You also have the Book of Enoch, my personal favorite. And see, is that it? Yeah, the Book of Enoch. Now, you do also have the Egyptian Book of the Dead written by Thoth. It also has some things about the Watchers in it. But it's more of a ritualistic book on death and the celebration of death because of the new birth and the rise of the phoenix. It's completely different. We're not talking about rituals. We're talking about the Annunaki, the ones who came from the sky.
You also have H.P. Blavatsky's translations of those ancient scrolls and tablets that predate the Sumerian ones. You can find that information on Leak Project, and you can also find from the Leak Project where to find these documents for yourself to read them, which is what I recommend that you do to any document or scripture or scroll or tablet. If you want to know the truth, you've got to get your hands on it and read it for your damn self. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Amon's word for it. Hell, don't take Jesus Christ's word for it. Read it for yourself.
That's the best thing you could do is read it for yourself, because that's how I learned so much about the subject, was reading it for myself, reading the different text. And it didn't, nobody had told me, hey, the Anunnaki could be this group too, or they could be this group of gods as well. Now, this was kind of a path me and J.A. had went along together, and we would kind of just discuss these things, and, it'd be an epiphany, after meditation. This goes back to meditation and, your epiphanies, the infinite intelligence relaying messages back to you, giving it stuff that you're attracting to you. And we would kind of talk about, is it possible that these gods are the same God into a different culture, and just to be later on, that would be basically concluded as fact that every culture is telling the same story from a different culture. That's why they have different names, because they have different languages and different writing systems, so on and so forth.
Yeah, basically the same spirit is showing up in different avatars to different groups of people in different time periods, so everybody gets to hear the message. It wouldn't be fair if only this group over here. I mean, the divine is not partial.
No.
The universe isn't partial. Everybody gets to hear the truth. And so that's what's happened.
Yeah.
Is these spirits have taken on different flesh vessels and shown up, and they've told what needed to be told. And depending on where they were and what context, what time period, that's how the name was determined. They've taken on different names for themselves, and people have given them different names. So there you have it.
I wasn't going to go into any kind of bashing on Christians, but I will say this. It always leads back to it seems, but
because that's where we came from. That's our roots.
This is exactly, and it really kind of didn't do anything but leave us still wanting, but not no more. Anyway, J.A. was just talking about the cultures, okay, and how each culture had that same deity in a different form or a different name. You hear Christians, and they'll take this passage out of the Bible, and it was Jesus, who said, "It is better for you to have never have known than to know and go back to the way you were." And Christians will parallel that with cultures who don't have the privilege of learning about the Messiah, and say that that's what it's talking about. That it's better for them to have never have known than to learn. And that has nothing to do with it. It's a very esoteric message. That means it is better for you to have never known the truth than for you to experience the truth and know that this is the way and this is truth, and for you to go back and act like truth isn't there and you don't know shit. That's what it's talking about.
To go back to your religious dogmatic absolutism.
Exactly.
After you've learned the truth of the unification of all, that all is mind, so on and so forth, as above, so below, the universal truth, not the religious truth that is central to one belief system and ideology that says this is the end all be all of everything. It's the knowledge that that there's a universal truth that transcends religion and dogma. And to know that, to be awakened and enlightened to that, and then to return to your limited fucking to your brainwashed state, just out of comfort, because it's what you know, it's what you're familiar with, it's the tradition, it's all you've ever known. To return to that for those reasons is basically what he's talking about. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. This is definitely what I'm talking about, because it takes away. This go kind of all right. A preview for what I'm about to say is, think about the heretics that the church would burn in public for looking at the telescope, the original Bavarian Illuminati, who would look through telescopes just so they could get a better understanding of creation, and would be branded a heretic and a satanic devil worshiper because they looked in a freaking telescope. It's the same concept as, okay, you're punishing these people for looking at the creation of God, and it's almost the exact same particular hateful spirit that is pushing this. Well, if how's it go? I'm trying to remember this dogma crap that they say about this whole culture thing. Oh, and my problem is it takes away from you're taking power away from the creator. You're telling me that the creator wasn't smart enough, and as he touched on, the creator was so smart that he took in each culture and he placed an avatar with the spirit of truth in each one of them, so that there would be a savior. And every one of those stories is a representation of each and every one of us. It's supposed to be our story. It's our redemption story. It's our salvation, but it's salvation of self. And what doesn't it take away from the power of your creator to think that this magnificent, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent force wasn't smart enough to place? They're basically saying that all these avatars are fake. These are false gods. Don't worry about that. And these are all in cultures that don't have Jesus in it. Jesus Christ, the Greek name of Issa. It's taken away from the beauty and the magic and the power of the creator to sit there and think that he would just randomly throw people in the middle of a big, basic primordial suit and say, hey, fight him on your own. Here you go.
Yeah, if you weren't born in the right place or the right time period, and you haven't heard this message from this book that has passed through the hands of thousands of people and been retranslated and rewritten and intentionally perverted and polluted, then you're fucked for eternity. You're fucked. And sorry that you weren't born in the right place at the right time to hear this.
Hey, tough luck, bitch.
You're born in Zimbabwe. Poor little Magugu in Zimbabwe. And this is not a racial slur. I apologize if that's offensive. I'm just taking an example off the top of my head. Poor little Magugu in Zimbabwe was born in a remote section of Africa, and he didn't hear the message that you dogmatists have brought. So he's fucked for eternity. No. The creator, was smart enough to know that people would be born in regions that could not be reached by this group that's purporting to have the absolute truth of the universe. So he sent an avatar. He put the same spirit in a different vessel to deliver that message. And it just so happened to manifest with different vocabulary and with a different name on it. Same message. Because, again, you're in a different culture, with a different language, in a different place, at a different time. So, of course, it's going to be slightly different. But, again, the overall message is the same.
Yeah, you're fucked. You should have been born in Europe. Everybody needs to be white and born in Europe, apparently.
Yeah.
And that wants to bring me to something else. Now, I know we are talking about the Anunnaki, but I'm talking about Africa. Because I've been bothered.
Okay, so we went to Africa.
I like that.
There we go.
I'm going to, Middle East, Africa. Think about it. North Africa, Middle East, they're connected. They're still living, the pictures they show us over there, they're still living like they were 2,000 years ago over there. You think about Ethiopia, okay? Ethiopia seems like it's just some part of the earth that they basically have quarantined off from the rest of the land, and these people are eating freaking flies and drinking river with nasty waste in it and stuff like that. But here's the truth about Ethiopia. Enoch, the seventh generation of Adam, was from Ethiopia. He was actually probably black. And I'm totally okay with that. Yeah, I have no problem with that. It does not bother me. It doesn't offend me. It makes me happy. And I also have learned recently that there was a lot of tablets found in Ethiopia, and Ethiopia was never getting credit for them being found there. And wouldn't it make a lot of sense with your seventh generation of somebody such stature as Enoch, who later would become Metatron, came from that place? That just goes to show you that the universe doesn't see a damn thing. This flesh doesn't mean shit. It means nothing except to the people around on this dimension. It has nothing to do with spirit. If it did, then how did a black Ethiopian end up being at the top of the Kabbalah tree of life? Ask yourself that.
I actually think that the divine does these things on purpose. And I'm not saying anything about race at this point. This is not about Enoch being black and from Ethiopia. I'm just expounding upon that subject, that the divine tends to take the lowliest of us and make great things out of us. Because, like, for example, Yeshua, whom a lot of people know to be Jesus Christ, but that wasn't his name. He was a Hebrew born in Israel, and there's never been a person in the history of the universe born in Israel named Jesus.
Ever.
That's a Greek name that was made up.
Greece didn't. Greece wasn't even there then.
Yeah, so Yeshua is born of lowly birth. He's not royal blood or anything like that. And you could speculate on whether or not he was from the line of King David, but being the stepson, if he was born of a virgin, he would be the stepson of Joseph, who was from the line of David. Then he really doesn't have the DNA of David to make him of that line. So again, he's not from royal bloodline, if that story is true. He's really a nobody. But he becomes this martyr, this revolutionary, this great spiritual revolutionary again. And this happens over and over, like Mahatma Gandhi. This man united millions of people, something that has never been done. The Buddha, I mean, he doesn't really fall in that category, but he's just somebody that, just from like, what's another example? Let's take Joseph in the Bible. He was thrown into a pit by his brothers. He was a nobody. He came out of slavery. He was imprisoned for false charges of rape against a woman, and he ends up being right-hand man to an emperor. So people come out of nothing, and the divine tends to do that. Just pick this guy because he has a certain thing about him, his heart, a heart for things spiritual, for things divine, and there's something special about his mind. has nothing to do with outward appearance. Wow, we just got off on a tangent.
That's good. No, but that's the beauty of it.
So back to Africa though. Okay.
Well, I just want to say this real
Okay,
quick.
go on.
I'm sorry, but I just love it.
Go on.
I love it how everything connects. But just as Christ was the light, he was the one, the chosen one, surrounded by the 12, who was martyred, or people tried to martyr him, and then he was martyred. I've even heard he didn't die, but who knows? You also have the story of Joseph. I like that he just brought up Joseph. And Joseph was the dreamer. He was seeing things. He was the chosen one. His daddy came and told him that he was the chosen one based on a dream that he had had. And he was surrounded by 12 brothers and sisters, the tribes of Judah and Israel.
And they hated him for telling him that.
Oh, they couldn't stand it. And it's the reason we just bring it up is just it just goes back to the cultures. It bothers me, but I know what it is now. But to get back on subject, I'm sorry about that. I just get that way sometimes. I go from subject to subject. But to go back on subject, the Anunnaki, who are you had the top echelon Anunnaki, Anu, the Almighty. He had two sons who were actually mattered, and this is where you get the two brothers who are always beefed out in the Bible and all the other cultures, like Cain and Abel and
Jesus and Lucifer. Same thing.
Isaac and Jacob. All these brothers that arguing. One was this way and the other was that way. Well, he had these two sons, Enki and Enlil. Enlil was also called familiar Hebrew terms, apparently. And essentially what was happening was the original Hebrew documents, Sumerian, Babylonian, Egyptian Hebrew documents, came out and had these deities or these people, we'll call them people, whatever, in these texts. And somewhere along the way, they took all of them out and they replaced it with God, Jehovah, Almighty, Elohim, so on and so forth, but in just a one God. See, Thoth was a follower of the one God theory, and that's where Moses got his obsession with the one God theory from, which is not bad. But their one God and the true one God is two different things. The true one God is the universe as a whole. It's the spirit, it's the breath, it's the masculine, feminine energy combined. That's the true one God, and that was what Thoth was following. That's what Thoth before he was on Atlantis. He was the high priest of Atlantis. Another dimension, not even the same dimension of that we're on, not the same dimension that Sumeria, Babylon, and Egypt was on. It wasn't. You had Lemuria and you had Atlantis. Well, what had happened was the government had gotten polluted with power, and they used alchemy and all the esoteric knowledge, alchemy, Kabbalah, magic, divine harmonic, to just create, and they were very, very technological, and they were basically just going around conquering everything and taking out everybody. They say Lemuria was covered with reptilian. I don't know, but that's a different dimension. Thoth, I don't know what his name was. I think it was Melchizedek then, and according to the documents, he is Melchizedek, and that was another one of those epiphanies out of nowhere a long time ago that said, you know what, Thoth's probably Melchizedek, because they both didn't have a dad. And he essentially takes the four powerful elements of Kabbalah, magic, divine harmonic, and what am I forgetting? Alchemy. And creates a very, very, very dense atom, and he blows Atlantis off the map. He flees to another dimension, and where's what is called, they said Egypt, but he really is talked about in Sumerian, Babylonian. I just think that they had a different name because it was a different language. And like, oh, well, that's Ningashazita, and that's Thoth. So they got all these different things. You start seeing like the parallels with Melchizedek not having a father or no lineage. He came from
like he had no beginning. He just showed up.
Yeah, Thoth was not born from parents.
Just out of nowhere. They never spoke of him before this time, and all out of nowhere in the Bible, all of a sudden they're making offerings, bringing tithes for Melchizedek.
Yeah.
And he has no origins whatsoever that's referenced.
And they tell
And
you
it
that.
says that there's no origin of this person.
They actually tell you that, which obviously tells you that it's supernatural in some kind of way. If this man was not
probably
born,
came from another dimension.
Come on. If this man was not born from parents, he had no parents.
And there's speculations that it's a typology of Christ, like an archetype, which it very well is. But we're trying to discern and determine where that came from, where the origins of this was, and there's the synchronicities with Thoth, with Thoth, whatever you want to call him, Tahuti. He has many names, just like all the fucking deities.
Everybody does.
They have so many goddamn names.
That's why we're gonna have about 7 by the time we're done.
Yeah, I've already got 3, and I'm not even deified yet.
Wow.
I mean, besides my own divine nature, but I mean, I'm not a god that's worshipped yet.
I mean, you see how easy it is for someone to develop more names?
Yeah.
Especially back then. They apparently had, if you really don't even know what the fuck's going on right now, and you're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about?
Okay, I said yet. I'm not. My end goal is not to be a god that's worshipped. I just was kind of maybe I shouldn't have even said that. Yet was not supposed to be part of that equation. Okay.
You see how easy it is for all these different. Look how quick me and him just developed 3 different names. You have each culture given a different name, which it really doesn't matter. And then you have these beautiful
names.
Man, you could go read the book of Hebrews, and it talks about Melchizedek. It actually has a lot about parallels of Christ becoming the high priest of the order of Melchizedek.
Right.
And
no Christian ever knows what the hell that is. No, they don't teach on it. They try to just gloss over that. They're like, Melchizedek, what the fuck is that? Okay, yeah. Moving on back to my dogmatic ideology and absolutism, and I'm just going to pretend that I didn't read that. Well, same thing with the offerings made to Azazel in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
By Aaron. Just gloss over that. Oh, Azazel. I don't know who that is. Let's move on.
I'll never forget me showing
the book of Yasher referenced in the Old Testament. Oh, I don't know what that is. Let's move on.
I'll never forget the time I found that shit in Leviticus, where they were like, your whole life you've been hearing about these. That's wrong to be. You don't offer anything. You don't even fuck with.
You don't make offerings to demons.
You don't
as
fuck
a Christian or as a Jew.
Any satanic deity. And I remember I showed him. I said, dude, look at this shit. And we were just flabbergasted that all our life. And then you just start seeing it's such a big Bible, but it's got limited pages. But we could go in there any time of the day and find something that has totally been overlooked by the religions. I'm sorry I keep getting off subject, but how is John 10:34 so overlooked? It's the most powerful verse for me, besides the first beginning of John. That part where he says, "Is it not written in your law that you are gods? That I said that you are gods."
And we can have a whole video series just on the esoteric knowledge in the Bible. We can use Bible stories, parables.
Yeah, that's the problem about it. We get sidetracked.
Whole sections of the Bible to teach esoteric knowledge from. And this is what I get annoyed with a lot of occultists and pagans, is that they just refuse to accept that the Bible has value, that Christ, the person of Christ, has value.
Oh yeah.
We can learn from any sacred book, any holy book, the Quran, the Vedas, the Bible.
Yes. I like how Frederick Xavier, he's not a Christian, but he will tell you in a heartbeat that the book of Psalms is one of the most powerful books in the Bible.
I love Frederick Xavier's Mind and Magic channel. You got to check it out.
Got to check it out. Frederick Xavier, genius, helped me a lot with questions I had. And he kind of introduced me to him.
His astrology is where I benefit most because I've never found really good information on astrology. And Freda has just really...
Universe bless you, Frater.
Bless you, Frater.
You rock, bro. You rock. Fuck all them other people that piss you off. We love you. You rock. You know that.
Love you, Frater.
Now, let's talk about the Anunnaki. With all that said, we kind of got an intro. We gave you all kinds of extra shit to now get to here. The Anunnaki is a group allegedly, which I
Can I preface with one statement?
yes.
Okay. So genealogists and people who study the DNA of humankind, such as Ancestry.com, 23andMe, which I have done, and I'm waiting on my results now. I've sent my DNA to these people. But anyway, through the study of human DNA, genealogists and whatever other class of scientists goes along with that, anthropologists, etc., have determined that the female genome, all DNA of the females on this planet Earth, can all be traced back to one female that was located in Africa. This DNA can be traced back to one person in Africa thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Not 6,000 years ago, thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of years ago in Africa. So, our species, Homo sapiens, the modern man, began in Africa.
Genetically engineered.
All right, now let's get into it.
All right. The genetic engineering of humans is something that at the first time I had seen that, I didn't know what to fucking think. I was like, come on, man. You trying to tell me I was made by an alien? Well, yeah, you were. I don't give a fuck. It doesn't matter. It's skin. It doesn't matter. It's skin. It's skin. They don't make the spirit. There's something in the process of the grounding of this.
Okay. When we get to that part, I've got this thing that I've channeled from Inanna that really solidifies how the human spirit came into this vessel. But they did not create our spirit. They engineered this body that we have, and like originally. Well, I'll just let you go on, and I'll get to that later.
I want to know. I want to know about the soul chamber. Now, in the Middle East, I remember reading about the soul chamber. So I guess this is where the spirit it connects. I don't know, but it talks about a soul chamber. Genetic engineering of humans. What happened was the Anunnaki came here looking to mine for gold. And they went to Africa, who is, even today, and this was millions and millions of years ago, is completely enriched in many earthly luxurious elements, but especially gold. Right. The obsession with gold by the politicians, the obsession with gold. When you watch CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, any of these things, you constantly see gold commercials. Turn in your gold now. Give us your gold now. Give us your gold now. Gold, gold, gold. I mean, it's gotten to the point. Think about it. It's gotten to the point that you can actually take jewelry that has been stolen and get it melted down really quick. So, this gold is so important for them to take away from the human species because they feel that they don't know what to do with it. I guess that they have I basically made it okay for people to go steal gold from other people and turn it in. No, I'm saying
it's true.
Yeah, because they don't check it. They don't check it, and there's no background check on this gold. It's like, okay, just go ahead and turn the gold in. Give me the gold. Give me the gold. So the Anunnaki back then are mining for gold, fuel source. I also read about the gold drink. That drink, it's like a youth, almost like the fountain of youth. Gold could be. Who knows? It's got a lot of qualities.
It's like there's a form of white gold that if you drank enough of it, you basically be turned into a light beam.
Yeah, it heightens your, it raises your frequency, and
changes your vibration.
Yeah, exactly. I watched that the other day and learned about that, and I thought that was amazing and made a lot of sense.
Excuse me.
Because there's an obsession that this world has had with gold. And think about Africa today and how fucked up it is, and how even though it's enriched with the most precious metals and solids that this earth has to offer, is mostly embedded all in Africa. You got the oil in the Middle East, and you got the fucking precious metals like gold, silver, copper, so on and so forth, embedded in Africa. So Northern Africa, where most of this stuff is just everywhere, diamonds. I mean, diamonds galore, blood diamonds. But nobody can seem to get a hold of Africa. It's just too crazy over there. somehow, some way, right in the middle, right in the stinking middle, in between Egypt and Israel, lies Ethiopia. It borders Israel, but it's part of Africa, and it's just enriched with all this stuff. But they got a freaking fly problem from hell. It's bigger than that, and so I keep getting kind of back, but sidetracked off of it. But the Anunnaki were here for gold. They had a group called the Igigi under them who were specifically there to do nothing but mine for gold. They were essentially just workers, mine workers for them, and they went by the Igigi. They're also talked about in the Book of the Dead by Thoth. Well, after thousands and thousands and thousands, and I mean it's like thousands of years, like 100,000 years, I think it was 150 to be exact, 1,000 years, there was a revolt by the Igigi. And they said, fuck it, we've had enough. This is bullshit. They felt like slaves. Well, Enlil, Anu, and the Karzahag, who would be the mother, the divine mother that my friend was just talking about. That would have to, if you're going off the Sumerian, which is the original settlement on this planet, on this dimension, then it would be Nekarsahag. I think that's the way you say her name. It could be Ninti. I don't know. There's different names. But she would be the divine mother because they took her. That was Enlil and Enki's half-sister. But it was also Enlil's wife and Anu's daughter. Weird. You see how the Anunnaki married within the bloodline? And then go back and read your Bible and read how they had wedlock within the bloodline the exact same way.
Yeah, like Abraham, the father of the Judeo-Christian and Islamic faiths, he married his half-sister.
That's right.
It's in the text. It's in the Bible.
They could always marry the half-sister as long as they were half-sisters through the father. They couldn't.
Right.
They couldn't be siblings through the mother.
They had to have different mothers.
I guess they would.
They could have the same father, though.
I guess that kept them. I don't know, but so that's the royal bloodline. That's why today your European elite and your Rothschilds, they still marry in the English people. They still marry within the bloodline.
And presidents of the United States are part of that bloodline.
And every one of them, including Barack Obama, who is second cousins
Major
with George Bush.
bankers, major world bankers, and financiers of all the global wars that take place and all of this shit. They're all part of that bloodline.
Exactly.
Comes from way, way back when.
So,
Do you think we should?
What the hell? How many minutes, man?
It's pretty close to.
You want to go part 2?
We could go with a part 2 on this.
Part 2.
So stay tuned for part 2. This is Amana Ramata.
J.A.
Ragnarson. We're just getting into it. Please tune in for part 2.